Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let the Tournament of Power officially begin! That's right, Saiyans and Saiyanettes, the long wait is over, the Tournament of Power is officially here, and just as expected, it's extremely chaotic, but incredibly fun to watch. With 80 fighters in one ring going at it all at once without being able to fly, the only rule is to knock your opponent out of the ring. Super Smash Bros. Style, if you will. And this episode right here was thrilling from beginning to end, because there really was no structure to any of the battling. It was just everybody immediately running into the middle of the ring, firing ki blasts like mad, and basically turning it into a giant fireworks field of destruction. It's pretty damn awesome, although I do have to admit I would have preferred more traditional tournament rules so that we could get to learn a little bit more about some of these very unique fighters, because a lot of them look like they'd have some pretty interesting backstories with how incredibly strange they are, like a butterfly woman by the name of Lilybo who can fire psychic blasts. She gives Basil the Kicker a hard time in their initial fight, but he actually ends up sending her flying off the side of the ring, which gives us one big confirmation, which is when they do fall over the edge, they don't fall into an endless abyss and die. They actually just sort of teleport back up to their respective god of destruction and wait it out on the bench in the stands. This is really going to amplify the tension, because when you see more people start to show up on the bench, you realize how much this quicker they are to not even existing anymore. It adds a really great dynamic to this arc. And like I said, there's a ton of really cool characters. I didn't even mention Napapa, who is this giant sumo wrestler pig, who also fights very much against Basil the Kicker in this episode, being able to withstand 3 of his very powerful attacks and throwing them up into the sky as he says, Dosakoi! Napapa is like what would happen if Oolong actually, gave a shit about training. Universe 7, predictably, of course, does not end up working together, with Vegeta, Goku, Android 17, and 18 going off to do their very own thing while pretty much everybody else stays behind, and then Frieza goes along to do what he does best, which is to be very smug and explode people's faces with giant ki blasts. I know that each of these characters are probably going to have episodes dedicated to them, but this firmly established that things are not going to go as planned. However, a lot of the members of Team 7 are working together, and there's a great scene this week which is sort of like an homage to all of their classic attacks, where you have Gohan, Krillin, Tien, Piccolo, and Roshi all jump up into the air and do one of their signature-styled moves, which is really awesome, but unfortunately does not do anything against their opponents. I really hope we're going to get an episode that's going to be dedicated to Android 18 actually battling against that female member of the Pride Troopers, as the minute they actually cut to them on screen, I started squealing like a fanboy. I'm like, oh man, this is going to get so good! And then they just tear it away from you, only to replace it with another epic scene, like watching Vegeta constantly punch this giant blue alien, which I'm sure is going to evolve into something else if the preview is any indication. Android 17 just throwing down with anything that gets in his way, and Goku himself, who's dealing with one of the new characters who was introduced even before the Tournament of Power, the guy whose name is Ganos, who is so strong that he can actually go toe-to-toe with Goku in his base form, so that's a pretty big accomplishment right there. But basically, Goku is more interested in fighting against either Toppo or Jiren, and he keeps running into both of them, but every single time he gets this close to them and starts to fight, someone else gets in the way and starts fighting against him. There was also a nice little small moment where you got to see the return of Atom Magetta, who was fighting against Toppo, and I absolutely love all of the robot fighters in this arc, especially the ones who dominate Universe 3. We got to see more of Narirama in action, and I love just watching him spin around like a top, knocking everybody away, and then suddenly Hit and Basil the Kicker come in, and they just completely destroy his arms in this epic slow-mo shot. It's just great. And it's just hard to process because there's so much crazy stuff going on. I mean, it really wastes no time. Once the tournament starts, it never really breaks after that. Everybody is just constantly fighting, and it's just a freaking feast for the eyes. It's also the type of episode that's going to beg rewatching a couple of times to catch all of the minor details and to see all of the cool, brand new characters. I didn't even mention this one awesome scene where you have this warrior by the name of Naek, who is from Universe 4, and he's basically a giant orc. fork. And he ends up grabbing onto Goku right as he's getting ready to head towards Jiren. And he basically is just going to try a suicide technique where he's going to jump over the edge holding on to Goku. And of course, Goku holds in his power. He doesn't want to waste any of it. And at the last second, he goes Super Saiyan Blue, which sends Naek flying down into the abyss and right to the bench where he immediately accepts his defeat in a very funny way. At the end of the day, this was a pretty fun beginning to the Tournament of Power, playing up its chaotic nature by giving us a ton of explosions, really flashy action scenes, and some really ridiculous combinations of characters teaming up with each other and fighting against other opponents. It was just action at its best. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super? Man, what a sensory overload this episode was right here. With all these colorful characters going up against one another, it's insane. There's also a lot of other little details that I didn't talk about. First, let's talk about some new things that are in the intro and the midway title cards, and of course, the brand new ending. The brand new intro basically just replaces Majin Buu with Frieza where it's appropriate, and considering he was barely in the intro at all, it probably wasn't that difficult for Toei Animation to go back and replace him with Frieza. And it looks good. It's still a little strange. There's something weird about seeing Frieza hanging out casually with Goku and all of his friends. And that also goes for the midway title card. Frieza has also replaced Majin Buu there. The brand new ending they use in this episode is also pretty solid, although I have to admit, I think I liked Boogie Back just a little bit more just because the song finally grew on me. It just had a really fun, poppy vibe to it, which was in many ways kind of an extreme juxtaposition to the manliness that is Dragon Ball Super, but I loved it. To me, it felt like a summer jam, and I really enjoyed that, not to mention all the imagery of the characters doing cool things. The brand new outro is basically more of that, but it's like one of the biggest stereotypical things about anime intros and endings, which is just the characters just kind of standing around and looking really awesome and staring into the distances as you realize, wow, I bet those guys are really freaking deep. And again, it's weird seeing Frieza just standing around all casually with all these characters with a halo above his head. It's surreal. It really is, and it's very strange, and hopefully it leads to a lot of cool action much later on in the Tournament of Power. Like I said, though, this one is just like this big, chaotic fight with everybody just doing what they can to survive and not being like much order to any of it. Basically, if someone gets in your face, you start fighting them. If you see an opportunity to take down an opponent at his weakest, you do it. Like, there were times when a lot of these universes would work together inadvertently, like when you had Basil and Hit working together to take down Narirama, the giant top-spinning robot. And then you have just a bunch of random-ass characters getting together, fighting against Gohan and his group of flunkies. I kid when I say flunkies, but I really do hope that all these characters are going to get sort of their individual moment in the sun, if you know what I mean. I really want there to be an episode dedicated to each character doing something that's going to blow our minds and remind us why we love these characters so much in the first place. What I will say is, the beginning of the Tournament of Power was a great display of just how incredibly insane it's going to be. It's going to be 48 minutes of non-stop action. I also like the little visual detail that the giant cylindrical tower in the middle of the ring is going to slowly start to drop, and when it does get to the bottom, that will be the end of the entire tournament, which leads me to believe once we get to the end and you start seeing that thing get that much closer to the ground, it's just going to get intense. So, great episode right here, some pretty decent animation, and the artwork is really stellar just because all of the characters look so incredibly unique and fascinating. There's a little bit of humor, there's tons of explosive action. If you like a lot of crazy key attacks, you're gonna love this episode. It was a chaotic beginning to the Tournament of Power, and I cannot wait to see more. I will say, though, I have to admit, the preview has me slightly disappointed because we see a lot of reuse of animation. A lot of the stuff that they actually did in the initial fight between Goku and Bergamo, like, we don't actually get to, like, see new stuff. It looks like they took that same scene and superimposed it over a brand new background of a lot of shit just exploding around them. And I really hope that's not going to be the case for the whole episode. As much as I loved this one, it also had a good amount of reused animation in it, especially with the scenes with Basil, especially when he was doing his signature kick-style attacks. They basically just reused that over and over and over again. But despite that, it's just a nitpick on my part. It's not like the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z didn't do this either. But I'm still getting so much enjoyment out of this one, and I just can't wait to see what else is going to happen. There it is. I loved this episode, and any complaint I have with it is just going to be superficial. It's really nitpicky, so I'm not going to apply it. This week's episode has me pumped, and you should definitely check it out if you're a fan of the series. 5 out of 5 from me. I loved this episode. Make sure to tell me what you guys thought about it in the comment section. While I really liked it, you may not have liked this episode. Please tell me why or why not in the comment section, and what sort of battles and team-ups and scenarios you hope to see in the Tournament of Power. There's also this big debate that's going on in the Dragon Ball Super lore, where apparently Goku is going to be getting some sort of brand new form that we've never seen before. It's been hinted at multiple times in the intro with that giant red aura. I've even made a video about that, but they just released a brand new image of him where he's got like his hair spiking up and he's covered like with this red aura and there's steam coming from his body. Kind of like Gear Second from One Piece, and some people are even saying that the shading in his hair, which looks gray, is actually the beginning of like another colored hair that he's going to have. Do you think that's all just, you know, just them blowing hot air, or is there really going to be a new form? Make sure to tell me all your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Dragon Ball Super related. Remember, like I said, leave a comment. I'd love to talk with you guys about this week's episode. And if you like this one, make sure to power up and fire blast right at that freaking like button. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and as always, stay dandy, baby.